Well, hi again everybody. Welcome to my latest video. Hopefully everybody is doing well these days and you're just sort of trapped at home like I am trying to find things to do. Well, this is one of the things I found to do. Get my videos out. Today I'm going to cover a very interesting topic. It's called VirtualBox. It's a freeware application that's available on the internet. Download it for free and you can use it for free. And it gives you a lot of power, as you'll see. It allows you to virtualize any number of other operating systems as just regular program files. And as you're running it, you could actually look at multiple operating systems actually talking together, even over your internal network. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this in detail from the installation all the way through the basic configuration and the installation of some of those images. If you get something out of this video that you found helpful or useful in any way, I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider subscribing to my channel. I'd like to start first of all by covering a little bit of theory. The theory around how virtual systems work. So let me go ahead and show you this theory first, and then I'll go right into the installation after that. So the first thing you have when you're talking about a PC is the PC itself. Now this is the entire PC with everything that's included in it that this rectangle is representing. First thing I want to mention that's inside that PC is a processor. Now if you look at it today on this computer I'm using here, it actually has 6 cores and it's using hyperthreading, so it actually has 12 effective cores or 12 different processors running in it. In addition to that, we have a large memory. This one has 32 gigabytes. Some have less, that's fine. The more the better when it comes to virtualization. And in addition, you have a disk drive storage area where your files can be saved. Several other things, including the program itself to store data. The main thing running inside your memory is your host operating system. Use the word host because that is a concept that comes out of VirtualBox and most other virtual machine type software. It could be either Windows, Linux, or anything else. Within the operating system are running some programs, and it just so happens the main program we're concerned about for purposes of this discussion is the Virtual Image/Machine Manager, also known as the hypervisor. There are many different products out there. I'm going to be using VirtualBox for this particular discussion. Now within the hypervisor or virtual machine manager, you have an operating system image. It's sort of as if it's a program within a program. The virtual image machine is actually transferring control to an area of memory where the virtual operating system has been staged, and it runs in there as if it is the only program running, as you'll see. Now within that program, we actually can assign it some processors. That's one of the powers of most hypervisors. So let's say in this example, I've given it 4 of my 12 processors. That'll allow that particular program to do multi-threading on the programs that it runs. So it itself will run regular programs. Now what that image is can be any operating system. Let's say it's Windows itself or another copy of Windows, maybe a different version of it. Well, you can actually run many programs under Windows, even if it's an image. But in reality, we have multiples of these hypervisors possible. So in this example here, I've got a total of 3 images. The first main one, and then I have a second and a third. Now we can switch control between them very easily. And of course, processors can be assigned to those as well. So each image can get some number of processors assigned to it. Now if you assign more processors than you have, then it'll wind up sharing them. Whichever one is more active will actually get most or all of the processors that you've assigned to it. But just keep that in mind as you divvy out your processors, that you probably want these things to run in parallel. And if that's the case, you probably don't want to assign more processors than you actually have. Now, of course, with that, we have disk storage associated with all of this. The operating system itself has some disk, and then the virtual manager has disk, or the hypervisor, and each virtual OS, depending on what the OS is and how big it is, will use another piece of the disk. And that basically says the whole thing in terms of how this all maps out. So hopefully you got a big picture view of it, and as we go through it and start using it, you'll probably get a better grasp of how it all fits together. Okay, let me start something you have to double check before you get VirtualBox installed, and that's making sure that your BIOS and your PC is capable of doing it. Now this is a snapshot that I took of the BIOS screen that I had to make sure I changed, and it was wrong on my BIOS. This one little feature under the advanced category called Intel Virtual Technology, it has to be enabled. On mine it was disabled, and that was a problem. It would not function properly when I installed it. So anyway, make sure you go into your BIOS and double check that that is properly set. Okay, now the first step to do in installing VirtualBox, let's get the source, the installable for you. If you go into Google and type in VirtualBox, it should bring you right to it. It's the Oracle VM VirtualBox. And then go right into downloads. And you get the choice of, the latest version is 6.1.4 by the way. You get your choice of a Windows, an OS X host, a Linux. Obviously, we want Windows. I always do a save as, because I like to keep a copy of whatever I have installed on my computer. So I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to temporarily put it into my scratch space. Just in case it doesn't work out, I can take care of that later on. So I happen to have a scratch area. This will be the executable that's downloaded, and I'll save it. Doesn't take long. If you have a general high-speed internet, it'll come down quickly, as this one did. You could actually run it right from here if you wanted to, but I'm going to just close this out, go into my scratch, and I'll just run this executable and install it. Pretty much you take the defaults. No big deal on this. It will ask for the administrator password at some point. You can be selective on what you want to install and where you want to install it, but again, take the defaults, leave all that checked, that's good, and install. Pretty fast. Just asked for the administrator password, and I provided it. Install that. Basically just installing all the parts to it. I do not want to run it automatically, I'm just going to do a finish. And now if you look at my screen here, I should have an icon for VirtualBox. It's all the way up here in the corner. I'm going to move it down here. Okay, I suggest if you're not logged in as the administrator, then you run the application as the administrator. So if you right-click on it and say Run as Administrator, it'll prompt you for the password, and then you're into the application. So right off the bat, there's not much to really change in it. We'll play with the network connection in a little while, and that's done once we have images loaded. But you can go ahead and take a look and make sure that any of your preferences are the way you'd like. There are a couple of them to look at. I do suggest that you go to the manual, and the manual is provided on the same website, and you can download it as a PDF. And here it is for the latest version of the software as well. There's a lot of detail in here. There's not a lot of pictures to illustrate things, so it's not necessarily the easiest manual to read, but you can look up specific things. So that's what I've been doing mostly. I read the first couple of chapters, and then I just did searches, either if you look at something in the index that you're interested in. So for example, if you're interested in the, let's say the settings to something, like the USB settings, it's in section 3.11, you could just click on this blue, that's a hyperlink, that'll bring you right to it. And you can then learn and understand what they're talking about. So I do suggest you download the manual and try to breeze through it. It's almost 400 pages, so you might want to think twice about printing it, unless you happen to have a a high-speed, low-cost printer that you'd like to do it on. No point in printing this in color. Not much color in here, to be honest with you. Just a lot of detail. So in terms of the settings, I would say, take a look at the preferences. Look through some of that. There's preferences on all sorts of things, general preferences. I don't like to use this directory, so I have another one set up just for this. So that's where I'm going to redirect it. I'm going to Other, and then I'm going to select the directory that I want to use. And I created this directory called Virtual Disk Images. That's where I want things to go. So now that'll be the location that it'll put everything at. So that's one general setting that I did change. The rest of the stuff I didn't have a need to actually change anything. It will check for updates every day. Language defaulted properly, so no need to change that. Again, most of this stuff I didn't see a need to change. I may in the future, but for right now I took it as it came. Okay. The big thing here is you want to be able to create these image files from operating systems. Now before you do that, you're going to have to install the .img, the image files from the various applications that you have. Now I showed this in a previous video how to download the image file for Windows 10. Just to remind you, if you go into Google and we type in Windows 10, and I like to go to the USB one because it's the same directory. So if I go into Windows 10 USB, make sure you pick the one that is Microsoft itself. Always look at the actual location that it's coming from. So I'm going to pick this one. This is the normal place you would download Windows from, normally to put on a USB stick, but in this case you want to do it differently. So you have to first install the download tool, and in this case you can just do a run of it, no need to download that. You've got to agree to the license agreement, accept that. I want to create an installation media, USB flash drive ISO file. That's what I really want. Click on that, click next. It's going to check this computer. It's already running Windows 10. That's okay. But now I don't want USB flash. I want ISO file. And when I do that, I pick the location to download it. Now it's already done, so I won't bother anybody waiting for that to happen. But you could pick any location you want on your computer and store the ISO file. Cancel out of this. And here is the location that I put it at. Now, in addition to Windows 10 64-bit ISO, I've also got Ubuntu version 19.10 desktop and SigmaNAS for some of you who've seen my SigmaNAS videos. I won't do that in this video, the SigmaNAS. That's a more advanced video, which will be like in a part 2 or part 3, more likely part 2. So I already got them down. So you need those files down there first before you can do anything else. So once you have those, and I have them in my virtual disk images IMG directory, then I can go ahead and actually install an operating system with VirtualBox. Okay, let's do our first one. Let's come in here and say, let's make a new virtual image. Go to the welcome. That's to where it comes in normally. And I want to do a new. I'm going to do Windows 10 first. So if I go new, now you got to give it a name. Now I'm going to call this one my Windows. Now it's observing what I'm typing. Be very careful here because this is how it identifies how to set up some basic configuration for it. So I'm going to say Windows 10, and I'm putting these keywords specifically 64-bit. So it sees that and it's automatically picked down here what it thinks it is. I'm going to make this my A image in case I want an ABC. And then it's already set up properly. It already identified it as Microsoft Windows and Windows 10 64-bit. Perfect. So I go ahead, do next. Now I pick how much memory do I want to give it. Remember I showed you in the description, you can assign disk space and you can assign number of processors. Well, in addition to that, you can have it get a fixed amount of memory. I never like to run Windows 10 with less than 4, preferably 8, but there's no point on that at this point. And I say next. It's set for 50 gigabytes of space. I'm going to give it a bit more than that. That's hard drive space. That'll go where the actual operating system executable image will be placed. But that's okay for now. Just telling me what it's currently set for. If I then say create, I do want to have it as a virtual disk image. So that's going to be an actual virtual disk image as opposed to a virtual hard disk. You can look up the difference on the two. One will grow and one will not, easier than the other. So I'll stick with the virtual disk image for now. And I'll pick next. I want it to be dynamically allocated, which means if it needs more than I've assigned to it, it'll go ahead and get it. Now I get to specify if I want a different number. Why it asks you so late in the game, I don't know. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just type in that I want to start it with 80 gigabytes. Now that'll use 80 gigabytes of my drive C when I do that. And I'm going to say create it. It can be as big as 2 terabytes, as you can see here. I now have it. I now have it all set up in terms of an image ready to go. This is the start-stop entry that's in the table here on the left-hand slider box. Before I do that though, I want to change the network. This is something that I found was a particular problem later on. So let me go into network and I want to change the type of network that it is. So right now it's a NAT. I want to make it a bridged adapter. By default it's a NAT, which means it'll sort of simulate its own little network by itself. I wouldn't be able to have it talk to another image over the network. Also, it will not grab a real address, so I wouldn't be able to get one of my other computers to talk to the image either. So I'd highly recommend setting that up as a bridge, and it works much cleaner that way if you do so. And that's really the only thing I really have to change at this point. if I go ahead now and double click on this entry here, it's going to run it. So it wants to know if I want to start using my drive D, which is my DVD reader. A little bit antiquated, but that's what it's asking for. I do not want it to start there. So I'm going to click on this little folder thing, and I'm going to click on add. I want to add something other than this drive D. And what I'm going to do is go into my Windows 10 image that's been downloaded right here, and I want the Windows 10 64-bit. This is the ISO file that theoretically I just downloaded. In this case, I already had it. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to take that, to open it. That's what it's going to now actually execute, as if it's booting up from whatever, whether it's a USB or a DVD or, you know, online, if you were to do an online Windows install. So I'm going to hit choose. Do I want to start it? Yes. It's starting. And look at this. And that's a regular Windows install. It always gives you these warnings about the mouse and keyboard. I just closed them. It seems to work fine. There's a lot of information in the manual about that, though, if you're interested. So now I just do a regular install. I want to do a next. I want to install now. I want to say I don't have a product key. I want to install Windows 10 Pro. I want to agree to the terms. I want to do a custom. This is my standard install. Now this thing here that says I got an 80 gigabyte, that's the image file that I created earlier when I first set up this virtual image. I wanted to take the whole thing, so I'm going to say fine, take that. It's not going to touch my regular computer's disk at all. It's just going to use that. And now it's installing. Okay, so it just finished up. Now we got Windows installed. It restarted the window just like it would reboot. This thing keeps popping up. That's okay. It's probably a way to turn that off, but I'll leave it alone for now. Starting all our services. And then I'll go through the basic introduction stuff. I'll probably zoom ahead here until I log in. Okay, it looks like we're up. Let me double check to make sure the internet is up. I'm pretty sure it is. Go right to Google, and there we are. So at this point, we're a running system. I won't bother configuring it too much now. I do want to show you one thing. Let me go to the command prompt for a second. And I want to show you if I do an IP config. Now that is an address right on my internal network, at least the network that I have isolated for my teaching purposes. I'm going to open up a window to my main computer. So this is a command prompt on my main computer. So if I look at this guy, what his IP config is, in this network anyway, you see I have a different address here. Same subnet, same section of the subnet, just a different computer address. And again, this is a computer that is not part of the virtual environment. It is a separate real computer. Okay, so it's up and running. And what I want to do now is I wanted to actually do a shutdown. I come over here and do a shutdown on this window. Power, shutdown. Notice it says over here running right now. Watch what happens. Powered off. So now that is completely powered off. Okay, let's install another copy of Windows. I won't install a different operating system right now, just for simplicity's sake. We can do that in a future video. Maybe part 2, maybe part 3, most likely part 2. But let's go ahead, do a new one. We'll call this one Windows 10 64 as well, but this time we'll call it B. It identified it properly and found the right configuration setting. Make this one 4 gig as well of memory. I want to create a hard disk, but I'm going to change the size of that, leave it dynamic. So this one, this should be different. I'm going to change this one to 75 gigabytes. And before we go ahead and actually install Windows on that image, what I will do is I will change the settings, primarily the network settings once again. And I want to make sure it's a bridge adapter so we can have our own little sub-network in here. Okay, now if I double click on it, it should allow me to install Windows. Let me, I'll pick the same ISO file and I'm going to install it. Booting up as if it was a USB stick. Same old, same old. One thing to notice, it is only 75 gigabytes now. And we're just finishing up now, and it'll be ready to do the initial setup, the user accounts and so forth. It's rebooting. Okay, it looks like we're back up here. And I might as well turn Discovery on. See, can I get into Google? I certainly can. So let me go to Command Prompt, ipconfig. So this is 109. Now I'm going to open up the other one, A. That way I'll have both of them open at the same time. So I'll have two of them side by side now. Log into this one. I'll go right into Command Prompt, ipconfig, and this one's 101. So we got 109 and 101. So here we are. We got two images up and running on the same computer. I could be doing two different things with them, and they're running independently. Interesting, isn't it? I could do many, many more than this. Obviously, the more that I do, the more that it will slow down. So we got to be careful about that, because there's only so fast this particular PC can go. Let me go ahead and shut these down.
Wow. 9,654 pieces in the city.
Okay. In a follow-up video, I will try other operating systems for you so you can see how that works. Okay, well that concludes my video on VirtualBox. Hopefully you got something out of it. Interesting program, isn't it? And as I mentioned in the video, there will be follow-ups to this, at least one, maybe two, with some more advanced features discussed and some different operating systems other than Windows. But as you can see, even making as many Windows images as you want works perfectly well and serves a lot of interesting purposes. So with that, I want to thank you for watching, and if you did get something out of this video that is helpful in any way or that you enjoyed, please do me a favor and consider subscribing to my video. My head will pop up here in a minute. Click on it, follow along, and subscribe. Well, thanks again.